Welcome to Trial Talk, insights from experienced New York trial attorney Michael Joseph.
Welcome back to Trial Talk, insights from experienced New York trial attorney Michael Joseph. With offices in Manhattan and White Plains, Michael has represented clients from across the country who were injured while visiting New York. I'm Kevin Rosenquist, and today we're talking about tourist and hotel injury cases. Michael will explain what happens when a trip to the city goes wrong and how New York law protects people who don't live there. Michael, welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
A lot of people visit New York for a few days, just a few days here and there. If they're injured during that trip, for example, at a hotel or sightseeing attraction, can they still bring a case when they live out of state?
Of course, New York's laws protect everybody who gets hurt in New York City or New York State. So if you're from out of town, the same laws that protect New Yorkers also protect you.
What are the most common injuries you see for, accidents that involve visitors or tourists?
Well, I think one of the most common injuries we see are tourists that get hit by cars crossing streets. New York drivers are crazy. So if you're not used to it, you're crossing the street and you're not realizing the vehicle is turning, you have to be on the lookout. Unfortunately, whether you're from New York or from out of state, New York drivers are still erratic. So we have a lot of people from out of state who are here who get hit crossing the street. Same laws apply to them. They have the right to the medical benefits from the insurance company for the car to hit them. They have the right to their lost wages, and they also have a right to sue if they're hit by a car. And as you know, New York City and New York laws are very protective of pedestrians crossing streets. So if you get hurt while you're in New York City, you really want to reach out to us because you only have 30 days to file the no-fault application for the medical benefits. Our office has a lot of experience. We do a lot of things virtually. We have a lot of experience representing people who aren't physically in New York. We do it all the time. Another category of injuries we see are trip and falls. A lot of people if you're sightseeing, you're looking up. Unfortunately, you're not always looking down.
Yeah.
New York streets can be treacherous. Unfortunately, commercial building owners don't always maintain the sidewalks the way they're supposed to. They don't fix the potholes. They don't fix the cracks in the sidewalk. And honestly, if you're in a crowd of people, it can be very hard to even see the ground. So you're stepping, and then all of a sudden, you trip, you fall, you break something. We handle these kind of cases all the time. The other kind of injuries we see a lot are with both tourists and New Yorkers, frankly, are restaurants or hotels that don't have the proper stairs or proper floorings. Maybe they're too short. Maybe they're trying to be architecturally cute, where they don't put the right safety standards in because they want a certain look and feel. Yeah. But then they turn off the lights, and all of a sudden you can't even see the stairs. So there's a lot of dangerous designs and things that especially if you're not from New York, you're not used to dealing with cars blowing red lights if you're from Oklahoma or Ohio or South Carolina. Here it's a rite of passage.
Yeah, city living is a little different than the opposite. That's for sure.
And a lot of people also just they're not necessarily accustomed to knowing that in the wintertime there may be some snow or ice on the ground. So if you're here for the holidays and you're from, say, I don't know, Georgia, where you're not used to seeing snow, or Texas, where you're not used to seeing snow or ice, all of a sudden you step and your foot slides out from under you. It's not something you're necessarily used to, but still the store owners and the property owners are technically responsible to clear the snow. And one of the biggest ones we see is transit. I mean, they're horrible. The subways, if there's a snowstorm, snow and ice will sit there for days. Mm-hmm. So if you're going down a stairway and you're covered with ice, that unfortunately isn't unusual because transit's always careless. And when you sue the New York City Transit Authority, you also have to do a notice of claim. You have to put them on notice within 90 days. So if you get hurt and you're from out of town, don't sit on your hands. Get in touch with a New York attorney. New York laws are incredibly bureaucratic. It's draconian. It's a gauntlet. You really need somebody who knows the ins and outs and how to protect your rights. Because if you do nothing and you say, "Oh yeah, a year ago I broke my arm in New York City," well, it's too late. If you had to file a notice of claim, if you got hurt in front of a certain place, you may be okay if it's a privately owned entity. But another problem we have with people out of town is if they do get hurt, they don't always document where it happened. So they say, "Oh, it happened on Fifth Avenue between 43rd and 44th." Well, that could be one of 10 different stores, one of
Hmm.
10 different building owners. So I think it's really important that if you're visiting and you get hurt, it's important to obviously take pictures of what caused you to get hurt, what caused you to fall, so we know what the condition is, but also take pictures of where it happened and right in front of which building it happened, because 10 feet could be the difference of a different owner.
Very good point. And obviously, I think some hotels use out of state management companies or franchise owners. How do you figure out who's actually responsible when an accident happens on the property?
That could be difficult. Typically, you want to keep your bills. Sometimes the bills will say the name. Sometimes it will send investigators down to look at licenses that are hanging on the walls to see who has the permit to operate. So there's ways to do it. It sometimes takes a little investigation.
Okay. What about Airbnbs? Do those fall into the same premises liability rules, or is the process different?
No, Airbnbs, they're properties. Anybody who's renting a property to be used, even for a short-term rental, still has the responsibility to provide a reasonably safe premises. They have to make sure it's maintained good, well. They have to make sure they have safe stairs, safe handrails, safe floors, safe ceilings. The electric has to be in good shape. They have to maintain the walkways. So if something isn't up to par and you're paying money to stay there and you get hurt, yeah, you could sue them.
When it comes to evidence, I got to imagine it can get difficult because someone might just not do anything right away, and then they go back to their state or whatever, wherever they're from. They haven't taken pictures or any of that stuff. How difficult is it to build a good case in those scenarios?
Well, thankfully, if you contact us soon enough, and if it's in a public area, most of these hotels have cameras in the public areas. So certainly we can do a preservation notice. If it's a very significant injury, what we can do is bring a lawsuit right away and demand, get a court order. They have to preserve and turn over the videos. Ironically, one of the tools we've been able to use to show hotel-wide conditions. In other words, we've had a number of cases where people stay to hotels and had really bad experience where the hotel has bed bugs, or they've got
Uh,
really bad bug attacks or bites overnight. So one of the things we'd be able to use to show notice are TripAdvisor and their own hotel reviews. We've been able to pull those and say, hey, you clearly knew about this problem. Your prior customers have given you 1-star ratings because of it, and it's on your site, or it's on Google's review site for you. It's on TripAdvisor. It's on Travelocity. So in those kind of cases, they kind of say, okay, you got us, and they tend to settle them.
oh, interesting. Yeah, that's good. That's good reconnaissance. I like that. I like that. That's good.
Yeah,
When it comes,
so if you get hurt at a hotel, that's because of a general condition. Look at the reviews. See if other
yeah,
people have had the same problems.
yeah, that's a really good tip. I never would have thought of that. When it comes to, you know, sightseeing buses, ferries, guided tours, are those handled more like transportation cases or like premises claims if someone happens to get hurt?
A little bit different. They're actually, for the most part, private coaches. So, for example, if you're on a sightseeing bus, the sightseeing bus is a private entity, and they have to obviously obey the rules of the road. If they get into a crash with another vehicle, they could be sued like any other driver. Or if you get even worse, if you get hit by one of these buses, which happens a lot. We actually had a recent scenario. I think it was Times Square not so long ago. 2 buses crashed into each other, 2 sightseeing buses. So obviously any company that's operating a sightseeing bus, the hop on hop offs, or some of the other sightseeing buses or services, have an obligation to drive in a safe manner, obey the rules of the road, not hit people trying to cross the street, not hit other vehicles, general safe operations. And they have to follow the vehicle and traffic laws. And if you get hurt because a bus that wasn't driven in a safe manner, you can certainly sue them.
Well, the people on those 2 buses in Times Square, but they have a story to tell when they got
Yeah.
back from their trip.
And what's interesting too is so you mentioned some of the maritime stuff. We've done a lot of maritime cases, and all the maritime vessels are held to the same standard of care. Now, some of the ferry cases, the ferries are run by the city of New York, but they all have to adhere to maritime standards. For example, they have to have non-skid so people don't slip and fall. They have a non-skid paint, which is abrasive, which is painted on the decks because it's foreseeable. You have a boat, the decks are going to get wet.
Hmm.
The vessel has to be seaworthy, so you have to have adequate equipment on the vessel. You can't have oil spilled on the deck. You have to have non-skid paint. There's a whole host of maritime standards that are present that are meant to protect passengers on boats.
You mentioned earlier about, people are sightseeing, they're looking up, they're not paying attention. How does the law handle that, as far as like, do hotels or anyone try to say, hey, this person wasn't paying attention, they ignored a warning sign, they were taking pictures? Does that happen often?
Oh, it's a constant fight. Certainly, we always say that, okay, you were careless, you didn't maintain the street, you didn't maintain this, you let the stairs be in a dangerous condition, and they say, well, your client was really at fault because they weren't looking where they were going. And realistically, in these cases, there's going to be some what's called comparative fault, which means that if there's 100% of fault, it gets divvied up. What percentage of fault was the property owner for not maintaining the condition, and what condition or what amount of fault did the person who got hurt have for not being as careful as they maybe could have been. And New York law has one of the most liberal standards in the country, where you don't have to you don't have to prove that the other side was more at fault to be able to recover. Even if you're 50% at fault, you can still recover, but you just get less money.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What makes these cases different for you as an attorney? Is it logistics with people maybe not living in New York, or does it take a different approach when the client lives far away?
I think the real difference is people who aren't here may not be as familiar with the area and are not able to describe necessarily where the accident happened as well as, say, a local person. So, for
Mm-hmm.
example, if which isn't always fatal. I mean, we get the police reports if there's an accident report or an incident report or an unusual occurrence, and sometimes we have to just physically go out to the location with them so they can identify where it happened, even though they can't describe it.
Mm-hmm. What about insurance, medical bills, that kind of stuff? Does this generally, cause extra challenges for tourists?
Well, I think it depends on how the accident happened. If it's a trip and fall, usually everyone goes through their own health insurance. Where it
Okay.
comes a little more into play is if you're involved in a motor vehicle accident, for example, if you're on a bus or if you're on in an Uber or a Lyft, then you have to go through the no fault process. And it depends on, for a bus, no fault's a little different. If you have your own car, you have to go through your own insurance first, even if you're hurt on the bus, which is a little counterintuitive and most people don't think of. And you still have to get those one of the transit authority buses or the MTA buses. But in general, if you're in, say, an Uber, you have to file an application with the insurance company covering that car within 30 days of the accident. And then where it becomes a little tricky is sometimes out-of-state doctors don't necessarily know how to bill the insurance in New York through New York's no-fault system, and they're either reluctant to treat you or they don't do it right. So you end up having some lien issues we have to resolve. That's where it gets a little technical.
I bet. So if you're outside, we've been talking about, people sightseeing and being outside. If you get hurt walking on a sidewalk, what who do you go after? What should the person do? What is your recommendation?
So if you get hurt on the sidewalk, if you fall on the sidewalk, you trip and fall, you step into a pothole, really the first step is we have to figure out who's responsible for that sidewalk. Under New York City law, there's an administrative code section that makes the owners of property, basically commercial properties, doesn't apply to one or two family homes, but if you have three family homes, you have an apartment building, commercial building with stores or offices, they're responsible to maintain the sidewalk in front of their premises. However, if you're not in front of one of those types of buildings, you're at the Bronx Zoo and walking along the street in front of a park, say, or you're walking in front of on a street that just doesn't have any buildings there at all. That then is the city of New York's problem. So it's the city of New York owns the sidewalk and controls the sidewalk. You have to file a notice of claim within 90 days with the city of New York, and you have to basically be able to show that they either had prior written notice of the defective condition or that they caused and created the condition. However, those requirements don't apply if you have a defect in the sidewalk in front of a commercial building or an apartment building or stores or offices. So I think the first step is you always want to take pictures of, one, what caused you to fall. Two, take pictures and document where you fell.
Mm-hmm.
So we always want to know whether it's in front of a city building, even if it's in front of a big building, it might be, say, the New York City Transit Authority's building, or it might be the New York City School Board's building. So if the one of the governmental agencies or authorities owns the building, then you have to file a notice of claim. Or if you're walking alongside of it, you say, okay, I fell next to a building, I'm okay. No, what happens if the building's a school? If it's like PS whatever, or a high school, Lehman High School, or college, or the high school for the arts, then you may have to file a notice of claim. So you really want to, early on, figure out who's responsible for the sidewalk, where you fell, where the defect is, and what caused the defect. Sometimes it's negligent construction, in which case you can sue the last contractor that was there. You can sue the owner. I think you want to figure out these logistical issues early on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, complicated stuff, but yeah, got to get on it right away, as we always say on this show. All right, well, that's it for Trial Talk. Insights from experienced New York trial attorney Michael Joseph. If you or someone you know was injured while visiting New York, head to newyorktriallawyers.org to learn more and get in touch with Michael. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. We very much appreciate it. Michael, always great having you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.